Sarah, say hello. I'm Matthew Ryan. Welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel if you saw my first video on the interior design of the Real Housewives. There is going to be a part 2 coming to that video. I saw a lot of people requesting that, so I definitely will be making that video. Today's video is going to be a little bit different. I did briefly mention it in my last video, but I'm currently filming at my in-laws while my partner and I are renovating our home. So I could share some renovation progress with you. I'll insert some clips, but given the current state of the renovation, it is a little hard to share with you guys my vision. It's very much so in the beginning framing process. It's a little hard to share with you guys my style. So I thought a great visual medium is these digital material boards that I typically just make for reference for myself. While this certainly isn't a technical way to show an elevation to a client, I can insert some elevations I've done in the past. I find this to be a very tangible, digestible way to translate your ideas for a space into a visual medium. I use this a lot when I just want to get my ideas out there. I also think it's a great way to show my partner, who in this renovation process, I've been kind of treating like a pseudo client, because while my partner has given me a lot of free rein to design our space, I still think it's really important that our home be an amalgamation of both of our styles. So it's important to me that I know he likes the ideas I have for the spaces. This is a very accessible way to share your concept with someone. You don't need any paid programs. When I'm doing an elevation for a project, I typically have to first make that elevation in AutoCAD, a paid product. Then I bring it over into Photoshop, another paid product, to add all my materials in. And so after doing the line weights in AutoCAD and my materials in Photoshop, while the final result is a very polished, finished elevation, learning the software can be challenging. It is incredibly costly. And so using tools like Keynote or PowerPoint, I know some people are preferential to other services like Canva. These are far more accessible mediums that I think, while not technically accurate as an elevation, they sort of work as this material board elevation hybrid that I think can really communicate your space. I think this is a really fun tool to learn to use because it's something that we all have at our fingertips in one way or another, and it's pretty transferable. So the first thing you're going to do is open up whichever presentation platform you prefer. I'm using Keynote. Next, you're going to use a search engine to look for a photo that tonally and texturally represents the finish of the walls in your space. For this sample here, I'm showing one of the guest bedrooms I've designed for our home, and this wall will be finished in a pink lime wash. After I find the closest matching photo, I'm just going to paste it into Keynote. I like to leave a little negative space at the bottom to add some flooring. In a typical elevation, you would not see the flooring, but for these material board hybrids, I think it's really helpful. So again, back to Google, and now this time I'm searching for our flooring. In reality, when I do this, I typically just go to the manufacturer directly that I purchased from, and I use their sample photo. But for the sake of the video, I wanted to show you how easy it can be. After sourcing my flooring, I will paste that into Keynote, and I like to leave a little negative space around the slide. That's sort of just a presentation detail I prefer. And now that I have the wall and floor finishes of the space, I'm going to start to add in some furniture. So at this point, I would basically be online shopping to source all the materials, but since this is a space I already designed, I'm just going to access the websites where I purchased the materials for, and then I'm just going to copy and paste them into this space. If I were working in Photoshop, I would use one of the preset tools to remove the white background from this photo before bringing it into the presentation. But since I'm doing this free alternative in Keynote, I like to use the website remove.bg. And so on there, you can just copy any image and paste it right into the website, and it will remove the background for you. That way you can seamlessly enter your PNG into your presentation. And here for reference, I'm just using an antique chest that I purchased for this guest room. It's where we're going to store the extra bed linens. So I like to scale it down to size just a little bit in relation to the room. And what I like to do is keep multiple copies of the wall and flooring material, and I'll jump around to different walls of the room to design as I get inspired. So here I'm inserting the headboard. So I'll pop that into my blank wall. I'll scale it down to size. And then I like to add a drop shadow just to give it some depth and dimensionality in the space. Next, I'll search the web for a very basic PNG of some bedding. It just makes this look like less of a headboard floating in the middle of a wall and more of a real bed centered into a room. And then I'll pop that in here and just size it up a bit to better match the headboard. You know, nothing here is really to scale or photo accurate, but you want these things to feel relative to one another. And again, for every layer I add, I'm just going to add this drop shadow detail. It's just a presentation technique that's a personal preference of mine. I think it gives great depth to this space. Then I'm just going to adjust some things around. And now I'm just going to continue adding in all of my materials to this space. Again, as I mentioned, this is a room I designed previously, but during the design process, it's a really helpful tool to see how all of these different materials relate to one another and how they interact. And so here's another example of how this is not a realistic and accurate elevation, it's more of an approachable material board. As I play around with the scale of this bedside table, I'm also going to sort of warp the perspective of it. So in reality, it wouldn't really line up this way where I have it in the foreground of the headboard but in the background of the bedding. It's not exactly how all of these materials would interact in the space, but I just want to show visually how they're connected. And so after settling on this bed design, I'm going to move on to some other areas in this same space. And before adding back in that linen storage, I'm going to add in the decorative frame I purchased for the frame TV. Again, I'm going to scale it and add a little drop shadow for some depth. I'll add some art that I'm purchasing as a screensaver for the frame TV. I'll insert back in that tile cabinet. And here's where during design process I realized that while I love these two pieces, I don't think they're the strongest together, and I think they probably belong on separate walls. So I'll insert in another option for a furniture piece to go underneath the TV to anchor it. Here I'm playing around with an antique carved wood linen fold column. One thing I like to do is to keep all my slides so I have different options of furniture layouts, different pieces I've toyed around with until I settle on my final design. I also keep hyperlinks of all my material options for future reference. Next, another room in our renovation is a study for my partner. I like to keep a floor plan in the presentation for my own reference of the overall dimensions of the space. First thing I'm going to do is the same as last time. I'm going to look up a picture that will represent the wall material. Here it's going to be a white lime wash. I'm going to add in my flooring, and then I will continue to layer all the different furnishings and materials in the space. So typically, as is the case with most tile patterns, they're not exactly in the proportion that I want to show for the sake of this material board, so I just scale them down and play around with that. When I'm done scaling, I like to group together my little template flooring pattern I've made so nothing moves around. And then I just start layering all of my finishings and furnishings. So this is what's really helpful in the initial design phase, to see how all of these different materials and furnishings complement and contrast each other. One of my favorite things about using this Keynote method is how easy it is to add personal touches to your designs. My partner did his undergrad at Cornell, and in a few of his former homes, he's had this set of vintage class photos of Cornell sports teams. It was important to me to incorporate these into our design for his office, and while the actual framed photographs are in storage during our renovation, I just searched the web for similar vintage school photos that I can edit in for reference. And this is just a fun little detail for some added realism, where I'm adding in a white rectangle that I'm going to put behind the photo so that it looks like backing within the frame. I found a similar frame to the ones we have, and I'm starting to map out their layout on the wall. I continue to play around with different items that I've purchased for our home, but I haven't yet exactly found where in the house they're going to live. I'm considering this faux oak tree or this statue of Venus, both of which I think would look beautiful in my partner's office. I'm also toying with the idea of using both of these pieces in this space to anchor the console table, so let me know your thoughts below. Before I move on to another view of this space, I just like to layer with some practical elements that will be used in here as well, like this antique clock and this printer that my partner will use for work. Keeping just the materials that will be seen in other views, like the chandelier, the wall and flooring materials, I add in the antique carved oak desk with Belgian bluestone top, I add in the desk chair, and I add in this mirror as well as some other decorative finishes. And lastly, I'll add in some additional seating and continue to play around with those decorative options. And so for this video, the last space I want to show is our primary bathroom. And so by now, you know the drill. We're going to search the web for our materials. Here I'm using an unglazed terracotta tile for the floor and a green lime wash for the walls. I'm putting in this antique cabinet piece we bought for our bathroom. And so the layering begins. As you saw on the floor plan, we do have 2 vanities, but just for the visual representation of this board, I just kept it to 1 vanity, but we will have 2 of these antique mirror pairs, 2 of the vanity pieces, 2 of the sinks, 2 of everything you see here. I added in some more bathroom fixtures, and then I will be adding in some tile patterns for the shower walls. And using these green and white square Zelish tiles laid diagonally in this diamond pattern, we create this 2-tone checkered wall detail. I want to thank everybody for watching this video. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. I will be coming out with that part 2 to the Housewives video. I know a lot of people have been asking for that. Really hope you guys all enjoyed, and thank you. I look forward to seeing you all next time. Say bye-bye.